Hello and welcome, everyone, to Mastering Both Sides of the AI Equation. Couple of housekeeping things before we get started. The chat is enabled on this webinar, so feel free to connect with one another and chime in on the conversation. We also have the Q&A function enabled on this webinar, so any questions that you have, be sure to put them in that Q&A section. We will get to as many as we possibly can, but if we do not answer your question on the call today, we will connect with you offline. It's pretty clear that AI is at the top of everyone's mind, but AI isn't changing what we sell. It's fundamentally transforming how we work and how we win. But here's the challenge. Understanding AI as a tool is one thing. Selling it effectively, it's an entirely different game. Today, we've assembled a panel that bridges both worlds, being in the trenches every day, selling to pre-sales leaders, and knowing what it takes to enable sales teams at a global scale, turning strategy into execution that actually sticks. This intersection is rare, and it's powerful. So whether you're an individual contributor trying to leverage AI in your daily workflow, a seller looking to articulate AI's value to skeptical prospects, or a leader building enablement strategies for your team, today's conversation will give you perspectives that you will not find anywhere else. So let's dive in and explore both sides of this equation using AI effectively and selling it masterfully. I am pleased to introduce you to Two Wins VP of Operations, Chad Wilson. Chad, you can take it away.
Thanks, Aaron. Sure do appreciate that introduction. Team, we are very excited to share some fascinating insights that we learned just a few weeks ago when we did a version of this presentation at DemoFest in London. I am joined by two great friends, Brian Lewis and Brian Oling. Brian Lewis has spent 20 years in pre-sales. He's worked as an individual contributor. He's been a manager, a pre-sales leader. He now gets to work with other amazing pre-sales teams via Home Run Pre-Sales, where he's a co-founder and CRO. And I understand outside of Home Run, Brian Lewis is a runner, a baker, a former tuba player. Are you ever really a former tuba player? A tuba player and a pizza lover. But Brian Lewis, lovely to have you with us. Thanks for joining. And it was a pleasure to partner with you in building this point of view and working through this together over the last couple of months. Brian Oling is with us. Brian O is the founder and principal consultant of Progressive Selling IQ, where he helps B2B and SaaS companies modernize and scale their go-to-market sales and pre-sales teams. He brings over 20 years of global leadership experience in small, medium, and enterprise tech companies, including a recent role as a global head of solutions consulting, strategy, and pre-sales at SAP Concur. He's a longtime practitioner of the 2N methodology. We've worked together for over a decade. And he's now works with us as an independent consultant, facilitator, and coach. His focus is on blending buyer enablement, AI, and digital transformation to help sales and pre-sales teams help their teams drive measurable impact. Brian Oling, welcome as well. It's been fun to get your perspective. Brian Lewis and I sell into the pre-sales and sales market space. So in one way, we have a very horizontal, we've talked to hundreds of leaders and get their perspectives where you've been deep in leadership, leading these pre-sales teams recently, and driving some of this change. So I'm excited to hear the perspective as we get into this. Let's get started. We shared some of this point of view in London, and the intention of this webinar is to share some insights that we gathered. So for those of you joining, we give you some context. Brian Lewis and I spoke to around 300 folks in a main stage event at DemoFest in London. And as part of that presentation, we shared some insights which we're going to share with you as well. But we also surveyed the team. We asked them several questions around how they're using and selling AI, and then we gave them some time in table groups to work on some exercises together. And what we've done is we've collated a lot of that information, and we want to share some of our points of view of what your peers and colleagues are experiencing and what they shared, and offer some insights about where we go from here. And so I want to start with this. This is a picture of Fifth Avenue in New York City, Easter morning of 1900. And if you notice what we see in terms of primary modes of transportation, there's plenty of people walking on the sidewalk, but there's also a bunch of horse and carriage that are transporting folks down the street. And I was talking with Brian O last night, and he told me that, hey, the average speed of a horse and buggy is 11 miles an hour. Do I remember that right, Brian? Yeah, 11 miles an hour. Well, just 13 years later, this is a picture of Fifth Avenue, Easter morning, 13 years later. There's still people on the sidewalk. There are no horses on the road. They're all automobiles. A massive transformation in the way people get around in New York City, but the average speed of a car in New York City is still 11 miles an hour, right? So I think that if you were to ask a horse in New York City in 1900 about their station in life, that horse would probably say, I feel pretty good. There's 3 horses to every individual in New York City. We're the primary way that things get done. I think we're pretty secure there. But in 1913, they're nowhere to be found. So this analogy is absolutely not meant to communicate that I think we're all horses and we're getting replaced by cars. That's not what I'm trying to say. But I do believe that we are on the cusp of a massive transformation in the way that we interact with one another. The question is, will it make a difference in our effectiveness? Moving from horse and buggy to car did not help people get around faster in New York City at that time. It took decades for that to change with a new invention of the subway. AI is massively improving our efficiency. Is it helping us be more effective in what we do? And we're going to explore that together today. So we're going to talk about really 2 broad areas. Selling AI, what is it? What are we learning from people in the industry that are selling AI? How should we be thinking about that? What are we learning about how people are using AI? And how should we think about that? And then we'll offer a few next steps as we get into this. So let's start with selling. One of the first questions that we asked folks in London was, is selling AI any different than selling your core product? Now, I was a little bit, I don't know about you guys, I was a little bit surprised to see that 68% believe that the energy behind selling AI is much different than my core product. I thought it would be a little bit more half and half. But I think that there are some things that are different about selling AI. And as we were talking about this, Brian Lewis and I, originally, we kind of landed on 3 key areas of how this is different. One is it could be a competitive advantage right now to have the right kind of AI solutions. Although I would say that we're also hearing that there's some AI fatigue in the market, but it can be a competitive advantage. Without question, AI is opening up access to sellers that they did not have before. Getting C-suite meetings is one of the things that we're hearing quite often from our clients, is driving a need to improve in those executive conversations. And I think the third is freedom. I'm hearing from a lot of CFOs that they are cutting spending in certain areas, but they are opening the floodgates to explore AI and kind of learn through that. So, Brian L., I want to bring you into this. Some of what we were talking about is, how should we be thinking about this, and in what ways is maybe selling AI the same as selling any of our other solutions? And I'll turn it to you to chat about this a
Yeah.
little.
Yeah, well, it is interesting to see those results around, the almost 70-30 split there about, yes, it is actually different. And then you kind of get the flip side. You talked about advantage and access and freedom, but at the same time, is it really that different? Does AI change the fundamentals of a world-class, pre-sales process, go-to-market process? And kind of the argument is not really. And that way, AI is kind of yet another capability. Yes, the energy might be different around it, but it is a yet another capability that you're offering out in your solution. So it doesn't change the fact that when a prospect team, a buying team comes to you and says, we are interested, we have some problems, you still need to learn, right? So our discovery process, we still need to do that. We still need to figure out, why is that buying team here and going to spend money on a solution? So that's no different just because you have AI now. The questions you might ask might be a little bit different. You're probing around maybe where AI can help a little bit, but you still have to do, great discovery. And if we get there and say, okay, we now know why buying team's here, the classic, so what? Um,
Mhm.
so, where does that leave us in terms of I now know what you say you want and some of the pain points, but so what?
And so one of the ways to answer this question, and I'm going to share some results from one of the polls where the participants actually validated this as well, right? So in one way they're saying, hey, selling AI is massively different, has a lot of energy, but then later they say actually the core fundamentals are still here, right?
Mhm.
So if you think about answering the so what question or who cares or what's the three whys, right? There's a variety of ways that we try to get to this. The simplest way that I've found to kind of explain this is you've got the current way of doing things, right? All of us are selling a core product. I was talking with a leader just this week, and she was like, "Hey, we sell core security or core identity. People come to us for that. They don't come to us for AI, right? AI helps us with that, but we have a core solution. Or hey, we sell a finance system for manufacturing. That's what we do. That's what they come to us for. Yes, we have AI that enables that, but they have a current way of doing that is tied to their core business. And a lot of us selling have a core business that is still what buyers are coming to us for. They have a current way of thinking about that. And we want them to see another way of thinking about it. What does the desired or the future state look like? And there's this kind of chasm between those two, a bridge that we want them to walk across. And there's varying degrees of fear of change. And in order to convince a buyer to move from where they currently are to where we desire them to be, where they desire to be, we have to understand their motivations. And ultimately, selling is really about connecting to those buyer motivations.
Yeah, so it's getting from current to desired. So back to, is it different just because we have AI now? Not really. So we go from learning and the discovery side of things to the next part of it, which is, well, what's the impact? If I can solve those problems, whether it's through AI or any other mechanism, I still need to, as the best pre-sales teams do, talk about impact. And that's where we get into, at least in Home Run's platform, we call it value mapping. But we know, why is the buyer here going to spend money on a solution? What value can we deliver against it? And I know on the two win side, you have a really great value pyramid that
Yeah.
has a nice way of talking through the different types of value and thinking through that.
Yeah. Brian, I saw you came off mute. Do you have a point of view you wanted to share before I move into that?
Yeah, and I'm glad that we're talking about value pyramid because, as we've talked about, that's something I've used for decades, and it's really valuable. I think, with AI, one addition that we have to think about is explainability and measurable ROI. So when we are selling AI, we have to make sure we're selling those proof points that we've experienced out there, and we're selling a little bit on promise right now because AI and agentic workflows is so new. So I think the point is make sure that we're providing backup and capabilities because AI is not trusted yet with the hallucinations and whatnot offers. So
Yeah.
into the value pyramid will help you explain the value throughout the organization.
Yeah, absolutely. So one way to think about this, what we've tried to do is break value down across three different stakeholder communities, right? End users, operational users would be the direct users of your solution. Managers would be the folks that manage a function in an organization. And executives are not only folks with a C in the title, but these would be strategic leaders in an organization. And enterprise accounts, this could very easily be a senior director or vice president. In thinking about the impacts that we have at the operational level, direct end users tend to care about the impact on their job. Is this going to save me time? Is it going to allow me to focus more on the impactful areas of the work that I do? So thinking about operational impacts changes the way an organization functions at the front line. Those impacts will roll up to departmental impacts. These would be meaningful and measurable improvements at a departmental level. If I'm more efficient in a sales cycle, does that mean that I can get a deal done in less demos? Does this mean I can reduce the time to close by 30%? These would be meaningful and measurable impacts of, say, efficiency gains. And these efficiency gains may roll up into strategic impacts that are broader in nature, right? Do we have customers using our solution in a more sticky way? Can I drive adoption in areas of our solution that are harder to rip out, and that impacts net recurring revenue, retention, or consumption revenue, right? So thinking about how these changes really elevate throughout a value pyramid helps us think about different ways to map value.
Yeah, I like that. And so if we think about back to the fundamentals, of a world-class pre-sales process, we have great discovery. We've got value maps and value pyramids, but we're attaching to value and at different levels of value because right, we have access now
Mm.
and sometimes new access by way of AI. So we're thinking about where the value is maybe in different ways than you might have before. But once we have that, why is the buyer here? Why are they going to spend money? And what value can we deliver? Now we get into the classic stuff that everybody goes to, especially individual contributors around, okay, what can I show? Right? I finally want to demo something. And that's going to guide the demo outline. How AI, how you demo it, how you show it should be linking back to the value and ultimately back to why that buyer's there. And if you're going through, and we're seeing this a lot more with especially AI-enabled technology, sounds great on paper, sounds great on your website and your marketing materials, but prove to me that it actually works and can deliver value. So now that's guiding the evaluation plans for POCs, POVs, trials, workshops, whatever you want to call it, that technical evaluation. If we look top to bottom, I don't see anything about this process that's any different just because a product now has AI, because it had something else before and it'll have something else in the future. So those fundamentals are still the same.
Yeah. One of the one of the hypotheses that we made coming into DemoFest was that we would see this dichotomy, that in some
Mhm.
ways there's elements of the energy around AI that folks are really trying to figure this out. It is giving us some license to experiment. A lot of people talk about failing fast, go out. Brian Oling, you were sharing some stats around AI success rates with us earlier this week, right?
Yeah.
Talk to us a little bit about what you were seeing there.
Yeah, MIT has a study they did probably about 2 months ago that has been published pretty broadly, and it talked about 95% of generative, I think it was specific to generative AI, but just AI projects and organizations are delivering zero business impact.
Hmm.
And it's not because AI doesn't provide great information synthesis and execute tasks for us efficiently. It's really an organizational and a leadership vision and strategy problem.
Yeah.
And so the challenge for us and how we as leaders in our own pre-sales organizations have to think about this is we have to look at what the AI strategy is for sales, sales development, customer success on the other side of internally how we're using it, which we'll get to, but also we have to be empathetic in how we are selling this to others. What role does our AI capability and our value and our impact going to make in the lane that we should be playing in with our software? So it's really a vision strategy and how we organize and drive efficiency internally with it.
Yeah. Which I think has some very specific impacts to us. So we asked a series of questions, kind of where I'm going with this. We asked a series of questions to people about their experience. And actually, before I share this, let me kind of set this up. Here's the hypothesis. Brian Lewis and I were talking about this prior to DemoFest. I said, here, if you think about most pre-sales professionals, and Brian O, you may have seen this as a pre-sales leader as well, as you were hiring people and seeing people ramp. Most pre-sales leaders, I know I did when I was leading pre-sales organizations, we look for people that come from industry to move into pre-sales because you get for free all of that point of view, industry point of view, customer point of view, implementation point of view, that I don't have to spend my time as a pre-sales leader training and enabling. I can teach sales acumen on top of that, but I don't have to do all this industry acumen. And what that does is it gives sellers, pre-sales folks, all of that internal knowledge to have conversations that are meaningful in an organization. What we don't have is decades of AI experience and personal stories that come to the table where we can draw from that to talk about how to implement an AI use case. We're still figuring that out. So I want to share some stats that we saw as we were surveying folks that kind of help prove out this point. So one of the things we said is, hey, how many years of experience do you have in the industry? And this is not surprising. Almost 90% of people had over 3 years, with 61% having more than 7 years of experience in their industry. Now, this, I didn't ask it in terms of how long have you been in pre-sales, or how long have you been in sales, or how long have you been in client success. Like if you sell manufacturing software, you sell finance, you sell supply chain, how long have you been in that industry? Like over 7 years, most people. So you think about all of that expertise. And then we said, okay, prior to starting your sales career, and I apologize, this is hard to read. I didn't have a whole lot of control over how this came out once I printed it. Where were you? So I was 14% were a customer, 42% before they started in sales were in consulting or implementation. 18% were in support or client success, and about a quarter started in sales. So 70, almost 75% of people came with a lot of experience from a position where they were either implementing, supporting, or using a solution prior to coming into pre-sales. So again, I've got all of this knowledge for free that I can bring into these client conversations as I'm
Yeah,
coming into them.
I'm not really surprised by this. When we saw it
Hmm.
live in the session, especially the consulting and implementation. You're only in consulting and implementation if you also have that deep background. And I know some of the best sales engineers I hired were pulled over from that side of the house. They knew the customer challenges, they knew how to implement, they knew so therefore they also knew the product. They didn't always understand and know the nuances of the sales side of the house. And so there was some training that happened there. But that deep expertise, being really important. And even for our own, my own personal work with home run pre-sales,
Hmm.
August this year marks my 20th year anniversary in a sales engineering role.
Yeah.
So when you come into a meeting and have lived the life at every level in the org and then talk about best practices and developing a world-class pre-sales process and tooling, you have that experience to go. You get that trusted advisor status real quick. So I really like the stat, and I think it's important for anybody thinking about where they're building out their teams.
Chad, I'm going to suggest that since there are two Brians and it's confusing on here, that we refer to Brian Lewis as OG.
Oh, gee.
Engineering OG. That's impressive. 20 years, Brian. Congrats, man.
Yeah, thank you.
I love it. I love it. So that experience is really valuable, right? I
Mm.
think, and I wasn't necessarily surprised to see this. I was actually surprised to see so many people that started in sales without some of that industry experience. Um, So we dug into this a little bit more. So, okay, over the last 6 to 12 months, what has been the training and enablement focus at your organization? And so, product capabilities, 35%, product configuration, 8%, product or market positioning, 24%, soft skills training, 18%, and general AI fluency or effectiveness, 15%. So well over half of the training enablement over the last 6 to 12 months has been on product market positioning and product capabilities. Now, in talking with pre-sales leaders, I've been asking about this. We're definitely seeing this, right? We're a training enablement company, so we've got our finger on the pulse of what organizations are focusing on. We have the unique privilege to be at a bunch of sales kickoffs and hear what people are talking about. And so this was not necessarily surprising to me. The question I had is why are people focusing so heavily on product training? Because I will tell you that that this is much higher this year than we tend to see on average in years previously.
Mm.
And so one of the big trends that we're starting to see in the industry is, Brian, you talked about proof points and OG, Brian.
Yeah,
Brian
that's
Lewis.
Rich Brian.
You talked about proof points and proof of concepts and how do we prove out the value. Brian O, you talked about, hey, we don't have a lot of proof that AI works just yet. We're just getting into it. What we're starting to see is the reason folks are doing a lot of this training is because we're having to prove micro proof points earlier in the sales cycle.
Yes.
Right. So a lot of our enterprise customers have started organizations that have specialty. They're overlay. So they're not necessarily aligned to a territory, but they get brought in, whether it's like forward deployed engineer, field CTO, kind of that type of a role. We're seeing a tremendous amount of growth in that kind of a specialty role. And they get deployed earlier on, typically in upper mids and enterprise accounts, to
Mm-hmm.
build out micro use cases early in the sales cycle to get evidence of success because the return is there. If they
Yeah.
can do that, they can get there. Jeff Margulies talked about that a little bit in our last webinar about what they're doing in his organization. So some really fascinating insights. We're definitely seeing that, and I think that's reflected here in this technical enablement focus from a lot of clients.
Chad, if I could add 2 points to
Yeah,
this,
please.
uh, prior to the POC and kind of getting those up front. Coursera just launched their 2025 skills report, and the top skill that has had the highest attendance and focus by 195% is generative AI.
Hmm.
The second skill is critical thinking.
Hmm.
And so I find that fascinating because if you look at that chart, we've got mostly product capabilities, but generative AI is kind of down here, but yet we're talking about how to sell and use it internally. The second thing that I'll talk about and how we can be more effective and leverage training and software solutions out there internally when we turn to that part of the presentation is Aubrey Cote is an AI specialist and solutions consultant over. Many of us know her at SAP, and she shared from a recent Gartner symposium that for every dollar you spend implementing AI, you need to spend $2 focusing on change management internally.
Hmm.
How to learn how to sell it, how to
Yeah.
learn how to use it. Those are 2 points on, that chart is a little bit off, which could then tying into maybe changes in how we sell by bringing it more forward and upfront to prove those points and
Hmm.
validity.
Yeah.
Well, it seems like a lot of this starts to swirl together about just that the time we're in with AI around and just the uncertainty about what's happening with it. Because on one hand, the very first polling question said,
Mm,
what's the energy around AI? Is it different? And the answer was overwhelmingly yes, yes, yes. If that's true, then you get into the training, and the AI fluency side of it is one of the bottom ones in there. So there's a lot of excitement, but is that telling us that organizationally, there's still not a lot of investment in the fluency side of it? Tools might be proliferating. And I think we see this
right.
a little bit later. We're going to present some of the workshop results around these exact things, which is how are we getting trained on AI and what are companies doing and
Mm,
what's organizationally, how are they structuring their AI fluency training, enablement, and tooling strategies. And I think we're seeing these sort of differing points of view based on the polling questions and even some of the workshop results. And I think it's just an artifact of there isn't some standards yet. This is that new for every organization
right.
right now.
Yeah. Well, let's get into some of those results we saw. The last question that we asked is, hey, what activities could your team improve on? I think this gets to the point that we were talking about. 63% said value mapping,
Yeah.
right? If you think about demo outlines, evaluation plans, they all contributed, but really the opportunity here is for us in sales, pre-sales, solutions to bring our expertise. For many folks, the level of trust that pre-sales or client success has as compared to sales is quite high because of the subject matter expertise that really is here. And I think we have an opportunity to dig into that. So Brian Lewis, let me turn it over to you. We did a table exercise and you did some work to kind of synthesize what people were sharing. Walk us through some of what you found.
Yeah, and so for the webinar audience here, at DemoFest, we had the audience break up into small groups, so some peer-to-peer workshop exercises, and with these, worksheets for everybody to actually fill out with a couple of questions, both on the selling AI-enabled technology, so how they're selling their own tools, and then a little bit later today we'll go through the using AI to help sell. So these were the questions that we gave out in the worksheets. So if we go to the first one, how is selling AI and kind of your AI technology the same as selling anything else? And a couple of really interesting themes came out. Discovery and value, which we're seeing in the polling results and other places. The fundamentals remain key, right? Just because it's now with AI doesn't change those fundamentals. Storytelling and trust, right? Classic hallmarks of some of the best, pre-sales people in the world. The storytelling also connecting back to value and building that trust, which comes into some of the proof points we've been talking about. Those continue to drive that deal success. So again, neither one of those, if you took this out and said, is selling fill in the blank the same as selling anything else? Those are probably always going to be there, right? So it's a good takeaway around the fundamentals. But also that AI fits within an existing SaaS motion, right? It's an enhancement, not a reinvention.
Mm-hmm.
And I know there's lots of, discussion and depending on where your company is in their life cycle, the marketing hype around, no, we are AI, not SaaS, and there's some differentiations there. But at the end of the day, it is still just another capability, not a full reinvention. So that was interesting to kind of come out from the audience.
Yeah.
And so the summary, just AI hasn't rewritten the way we sell or pre-sales. It's just reinforcing some of the stuff that we already know.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we talked a little bit about there's different kinds of messaging. There's marketing messaging, which opens doors and gets eyeballs. And a lot of that tends to be really focused on future thinking, art of the possible. What could you possibly do with this? But when you get into the real conversations around driving business value and change management and how an organization behave differently, really it gets back to persuasion, understanding business impact, using good storytelling techniques
Hmm.
to be able to do that.
Some of those the right process and soft skills, even more so than anything else. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's look at the other side. How was it different?
Yeah. So in different, the themes came out around customer education first, that buyers are coming in, right? You talk about access. Maybe gets you in the door, but the buying
Yeah.
teams don't really know what AI can do for them. They're there to learn in a way. There's a lot of like in the AI fluency, even as a buyer, people don't know. And so doing some of that customer education, here's what it is, here's how it can help. So a lot more education than maybe on some other functionality that we might have been selling. New stakeholders. So we're getting, different executives involved because there's a lot of C-suite initiatives and priorities and mandates around use of AI. So they're wanting to know what's going on. And also seeing, it comes up in some of the worksheet results, the CISO getting involved a lot more than before. CISOs were always involved in vetting out SOC 2, Type 2, and ISO and compliance and all those things. But with AI, it's different. They are actually participating themselves, not even just their teams, into some of these evaluations. And then this was already brought up before around differentiation and proof, getting those proof points earlier in the sales cycle to keep that conversation going, build that trust as you go through. So in that way, you haven't always had to do. I mean, most companies will say we try and avoid the proof of concept if at all possible. And with the AI-enabled technology, you're seeing that swing the other way. No, we do need to call them mini POCs, mini POVs to show what this can actually do earlier to dismiss just the hype and say, no, this is real, this can deliver value. And that's a swing that we haven't seen in a long time.
Yeah.
One thing I'll add to this, guys, is how we're selling AI is the same today. And yes, these different proof points here that we have to consider are today, so 2025. If you're looking at 2026, if you're looking at 2027, sadly, you have to start thinking about these things. We are going to have to rapidly change, and it's different in this way because going forward, we're moving from generative AI, which is in the trough of disillusionment now in the Gartner hype cycle, and right on the peak of I think malaligned or illusioned expectations. We're right at the peak there, which goes in the trough of disillusionment, is agentic AI. And a lot of our solutions are moving past information synthesis to agentic workforces, which are going to be hybrid. We're going to have selling teams, for example, that work alongside us with both the sales rep and that strategic business partner, the solution advisor, and then we're going to have agents that are doing prospecting for us and executing tasks and taking care of that for us. So how you sell that, how you work alongside those agents is going to be a different way to selling it. And we're all pioneering this together.
Yeah.
So I just think we have to start ramping up our skills now with training and development so our skills are ready for 2026 and beyond when we have hybrid type of teams and workforces. That's what the C-suite is talking about right now.
Right. Yeah. Which I think aligns with some of the survey feedback. Only 15% of respondents said that they're getting any training on that. It's very much an individual first. So I think there's an opportunity around that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this is going to come up a little bit later as well, but about that human in the loop concept.
Mhm.
Right? It sounds great to say,
Yes.
yes, AI is going to automate every single thing. It's not going to happen, especially right now with the way things are at, with the hallucinations and everything else that can happen with AI. And also, there's just a risk factor. Do you really want to trust that AI is going to do something all the way through? And maybe once you prove it out, it can, but otherwise, the risk outweighs the benefit for full automation. So, where does the human in the loop work here? And how does AI become assistive rather than replacement? I
Yeah.
think it's going to be a key theme we'll see in the next few years.
Well, great points. Let's talk about how top performing organizations are approaching AI. What did we learn here?
Yeah, so strategic and focused. So the best organizations, the top performing, have that clear vision of where AI, and again, this is about selling your own AI technology, but having a clear vision and point of view around where the value's at, those defined use cases, the ROI back to the proof point. The responsible innovations, right? That we just mentioned is the concept of human in the loop, where the governance and ethical boundaries are around this. So thinking about that for their own solutions. And then also this idea of continuous learning. So once again, we're back to the learning, training, enablement of get in there, experiment, fail fast, as some of the groups said, train often and evolve that talent with ongoing technology and training enablement to keep those teams up to speed.
Yeah, I think one of the things I'm hearing from a lot of leaders is um, the overall failure rate for AI projects is pretty high,
Hmm.
but the return for the ones that work is very promising. So I think if I were to give any advice to you all listening and exploring this together, it would be when you find a use case that has promise, socialize that. Find a way in the organization to get airtime and energy around it. I like to say find somebody that's got the sauce that can help you bring it forward. The use cases are very compelling when they do work. I would say the other thing that I've seen just in coaching, right, and watching people use AI for those that don't know who 2Win is, like we do demo training, discovery training, executive engagement training, that kind of stuff, and then we use AI in our coursework to help people prepare. So I was observing this, and a lot of people stop at the first prompt, like
Hmm.
help me interpret this, and they'll see it as like, okay,
Right.
either it's a very long summary that's hard to internalize, or they're like, well, that didn't really give me what I want. It's like, well, how would you, if you were talking to me about that and I didn't give you what you want, what would you ask me to do differently? And why don't you start at this as a conversation and follow up 3, 4, 5, 6 times to ask it to do different things to see if you can get where you want to be. Don't give up so fast.
Hmm.
Keep working on it. I think part of that is just learning. It's training. It's us knowing how to interact with it, and it's really kind of making sure that if there is promise here, that we pull that thread to see if we can get where we want to get before we give up too soon.
Chad, that reminds me of the five whys. I've learned in
Yeah.
pre-sales, keep asking why 5 times. We got to be doing that in our prompts. Like, don't
Hmm.
stop at the first prompt, to your point. Like, keep digging, keep going. And you'll often find what I find when I'm either got a well or a poorly crafted engineered prompt is what it proposes as a next step in my analytics of my thought process is like, I didn't think to ask that question. So
Right.
ask five whys in your prompt, just like you would a customer.
Yeah. And see if you get to a meaningful use case, and if you do, socialize it. It can make a big difference if we could scale it. Right? Find the ones that have scale to them. All right.
Yeah.
Look, we kind of got into this a little bit, Brian Lewis. Talk to us about how are folks building AI fluency?
Yeah,
Mm.
so I think to kind of reiterate the point, when we saw the polling results earlier, this is one of the least funded training and enablement areas that most companies have, despite all of this big hype around AI. So, and this slide is about kind of helping your teams. What do you need to know about AI to help sell your own AI-enabled technology? A little bit later, we'll do the same thing about using AI, but it's back to the continuous enablement, this ongoing piece, this kind of, somebody said everyday AI in one of the workshops. It's not just a one-time thing. The hands-on learning. So, Brian, you were just talking about the prompting and the testing and
Yeah.
kind of the feedback piece
Yeah.
is getting into that every day and getting used to that. Because again, if we're going to be a sales engineer on a call, being the trusted advisor, talking about how our AI-enabled technology can help you, we really have to become experts ourselves in order to build that trust. Otherwise, you're going to get called out at some point and it's going to kill the trust and potentially kill the deal.
Hmm.
The peer learning. I think this was mentioned a little bit earlier as well around as you find these use cases that are then, hey, this was great success in this use case to be able to promote that internally so others know and can benefit from that peer-to-peer learning. So yeah, repetition and community internally is going to help build that AI fluency. And then also going to the experts that have the training, coaching, and enablement, organizations like a 2Win and saying, well, how do we structure this? How do we think about this? How do we get this ongoing process internally?
Some really,
Chad, one
yeah, go ahead.
One thing to add here, here's what not to do, because I like to share and
Yeah,
teach from
good.
my mistakes. At SAP Concur, we had went on a hunt to find well-crafted and engineered prompts to help drive and get people to not have to worry about how to engineer a prompt, but just use ones that are vetted and have proven value in a lot of different use cases. So we found about 250 engineered prompts across sales development, account executive roles, and solution advisor roles, and we put that into a library and we categorized them across about 30 different use cases. 75% of those were more top of funnel, top line revenue prospecting. And we launched it out to about 200 solution advisors. And we didn't find a lot of uptake on that. And a lot of the research I've been doing lately, and I think the failure in that is while the intent was to try to drive AI fluency by kind of spoon feeding them, use this prompt when you're pre-call planning a discovery call, uh, is further research I've done. Pick one use case. Pick one use case, and you'll get research shows you get 3 times the value out of that versus just putting 250
Hmm.
prompts out there with 30 use cases. So start small, be specific, and you will baby step into your fluency
Yeah,
as an organization.
love it. Thanks for sharing that perspective. Well, we've got a little over 15 minutes left in our time here. So let's wrap up the first section. We're talking about selling AI. In a lot of ways, selling AI is no different than selling anything else. We still need to connect to buying motivations. I think the opportunity that we all have just looking at the data is is a lot of folks, particularly in pre-sales, bring deep industry expertise, deep experience in the industry, but we're not seeing that deep experience and enablement in AI. What could we do to help prepare ourselves to tell a more compelling AI story based on our own experience, whether that's talking to customers, getting involved in some communities that are talking about this, working with peers, starting a focus group, that sort of thing to really push this forward. Let's turn the table to using AI. Brian, you put together a couple of these statements. Walk us through this.
Yeah, right. Well, we've got all this hype around AI. So, every CRO right now, because now we're talking about, pre-sales teams and sales teams using AI to sell. So, right, the other side of this AI equation. So every CRO is saying, use all the AI tools. The more AI, the better, right? Let's use it. It's really exciting to help us sell. Then you've got, and you talked about the access side of things earlier, Chad. Every CIO and CFO says no new tools, right? We need to consolidate our tools. That's been the mode.
Mhm.
Unless it's AI, in that case, go for it. Let's experiment. So you get a little bit of an out clause here from the CIO and CFO. Then the CISO steps in and says, no new AI tools. The risks are high, the data protection's uncertain, the vendors are unproven, right? Everybody was trying out all the tools, and then all of a sudden, the responsible party said, wait a minute, where is our data going out in the world? Is this corporate data leaving the organization? Is it being trained in there or somebody else getting the benefit of our data? Could it show up in a competitor? All of a sudden, the normal guardrails and concerns start to come in, and that's why the CISO is entering back in. So you've got these different point of views around if you're trying to bring AI tools into your own organization that are coming up. It's really interesting.
Mhm. One of the things that we were curious about is in light of this, what, from an internal perspective, do sellers have C-suite mandates to explore AI? And this was actually higher than I thought it would be. This is not,
Mhm.
are you experimenting with AI? Do you have AI use cases? This is, do you have mandates from the top of the organization to explore AI tooling? 75% said yes. I thought that was interesting.
That tracks with what we see across home run customers and buying teams that we talk to. Um, we're being told to experiment, we're being told to look. We don't know what that means, and we ask like, well, what does that mean to you, and what does success look like if you were to find something? Nobody knows,
Hmm.
but the mandate is to go explore and see what's possible. What's the art of the possible right now?
Yeah.
It's fascinating. I just had this aha moment. While 75% of us are supposed to be out there playing around with AI, only 15% of our money is spent on AI literacy internally.
Hmm.
That's dangerous. And what we found at SAP is we focused on Copilot and we had intranet was fully a large language model on M365. Then we had real-time access to the internet. It was awesome. Thank you, IT, for building that security for us. But there was a lot of shadow, what we call shadow AI projects.
Yeah.
People out using Perplexity, ChatGPT, they're out there because they're experimenting, but they're training on how to do it safe, ethically, compliant.
Yeah.
Wasn't always out there. We were trying to rein everybody in. It was hard. So I think you got to make 75% of the focus on it. Also equal training dollars in helping develop AI literacy
Yeah.
internally safely.
Yeah.
Sure. I think it's absolutely a fair point. I think some of it's also just the state of things. Like Brian Lewis, we were talking earlier today just about there's so much AI sprawl, and all of
Mm.
us have I mean, as a training and enablement company, we have AI options for our customers, right? We're not even a SaaS company. There's so much sprawl. So the next question we ask is how are you using AI right now? And this, I thought this was interesting. So there's a lot of
Yes.
there's a lot of options here. It's really spread out. I want to highlight a couple of the big ones. So 12% in account research, 17% in call summary and note taking, right? This is our Gongs, our Apollos, our Clarys, our Fathoms, right? Our Fireflies, all, like all of that kind of stuff that's pretty pervasive. How many calls have you been on when there's more note takers than people? Uh, 13% demo prep and outline, 12% emails and other communications. Those are the biggies, right?
Mhm.
Here's what jumped out to me. Almost all of these high ranking use cases are internally focused. They are not in and of themselves focused on delivering better service to the client.
Mhm.
They could be. Like, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying they don't impact the customer,
Mm.
but I can't tell you how many customers send me AI summaries of calls. Hey, we talked about this internally. Here's the summary. Hey, here's a 6-page report off of a Slack channel, right? A lot of customers will send me that kind of stuff. And part of me is like, well, what's your point of view on this?
Yeah.
What do you think happened there? How would you like to shape how this goes forward? And I see a lot of that happening. I see on calls. I ask people, how do you get discovery information today? Hey, it's usually we don't take notes as much as the AEs don't take notes as much anymore. That we get the call summaries and we go into Gong and we listen to the call. It's like, what about their point of view on what you should be doing? Not as much these days, but I do get a lot more information. So my question on this was, all of these are efficiency plays. I think the next phase of
Mm.
AI usage is going to be around effectiveness.
Oh yeah.
How are we using call summaries? How are we using these efficiency gains to be more impactful, be more persuasive with clients, help them identify meaningful use cases that they may not know are important, surface unconsidered needs, and then prove we can help them do it and help them implement it to drive that change. I think that's going to be the next wave of scrutiny on some of these
Yeah.
projects.
Well, and personal kind of anecdote, I mean, and not a plug for the home run pre-sales platform, but I suppose in a way, we use it ourselves to run our own deals.
Mm-hmm.
And the use of AI, I mean,
Yep.
yes, the administrative work is great, definitely saves us, hours in the day. But to be able to come up to speed on a new deal, what do we know so far? To be able to use that information to say, why is the buyer here? What value should we be delivering? What capabilities should we be demoing and eventually proving out over the course of the evaluation? Like those fundamentals for us are built right into that world-class pre-sales process and home run with all that we call Coach AI to kind of guide somebody through every step in that process. But that's great for us as the sellers. But more importantly, when we show up and say to our buying teams, we know why you're here. We remember. We're focusing on your value, not our features. Our features come last. It
Yeah.
does change the way you interact with the buying team, and you're kind of showing up for their benefit, which is the effectiveness piece of it. You close more deals, you close them faster, is what every sales team wants.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Well, we got 5 to 7 minutes to land the plane.
Yeah, let's go through these.
Let's share some of the other verbatim
Yep.
info we got.
So this time around on the selling AI, we started off with the same question we asked before about how you're building AI fluency, but then now this is about how you use tools yourselves and AI yourselves on the selling side of
Mm.
it. So the first set of results get into, and they're very similar to what we heard before, that continuous learning piece of it. And here's some things kind of talk about AI clubs and like the Friday meetups
Mm.
internally around AI that democratized learning, the prompt banks, the task force, the best use cases being reinforced. And then that hands-on experimentation. We talked about it earlier, but things came up this time around like internal hackathons and the live test and build sessions. So variation on a theme, but still back to continuous learning and the community aspect of it. So that's the same on both sides, it seems,
Yeah.
slightly different ways.
Doing it together.
Doing it together. Yeah, learn from your peers, just like we're doing here. This is peer knowledge going out to everybody else who's attending today. So then the question was, what barriers have you encountered? So now that you want to bring these AI tools in, your CRO is saying do it, your CIO and CFO are saying go for it. What's the barrier to coming in? Security and compliance, and correctly so. The CISO is getting involved in a way that they weren't before, even for these internal tools to make sure you've got the right guardrails, just because it is absolutely so new. Some organizational resistance. There's a lot of excitement, but also that confidence gap. Brian, you mentioned, I do one prompt and I don't really go back and kind of repeat or kind of ask the other questions. Maybe I don't like the results, so I'm not really sure. I haven't really invested my own personal time. I don't know what to do. So there's some resistance there. Fear of job loss. This is real. We are all humans. We have bills to pay. If I get really good at this, does it replace me? And so there's some resistance there. And then what I thought this was an interesting phrasing, the structural drag. We want to bring it in, but now we've got to go through security and compliance internally. We don't exactly know what to do. Where's the time in the day to do this? And so suddenly all of this other stuff makes it hard to really bring stuff in and get that good adoption.
Yeah. So I think this for leaders on the call today, I think this is an opportunity for us to think about how could we go ahead and pave the way, till the soil for some of these projects by getting ahead of understanding how we bring this forward.
Yeah.
But what about the biggest successes or failures? What did we learn here?
Yeah, and so you called this out in the survey results. Number one, pure efficiency gains. Automate the admin work. We're seeing the same question on an RFP. We can have an AI agent or an AI tool fill that in. We don't need to take, we still need to take notes, but we get transcripts and summaries and things like that. So these admin heavy tasks, these are the lowest hanging fruit. Automate the easy stuff. The insight potential comes into play, which is now like that next level beyond just admin heavy stuff. On the analytics side, what trends are we seeing in the data? What's working? What's not working? Whatever those kinds of things are. Seeing it in the sales forecasting side of things. So kind of how do we extract insights out of the data? So two successes. The failure piece comes into the quality. So in a couple of ways, the over-reliance. I'm just going to blindly trust whatever ChatGPT or any other tool I'm using tells me, and I'm just going to run with that. Okay, but that's a pretty big risk, because now if you lose that deal because you just trusted what the prompt told you to do, that's on you, not the prompt at that point. And then also just the poor use cases. This goes back to just people not being fully confident. We don't exactly know what we're doing, so we're not getting great results yet. Or there's also just the classic AI hallucinations, where AI, if you don't know what that means, it means the AI will literally make stuff up in the absence of not knowing. And you have to be really careful about blindly trusting the AI. So a couple of good successes, and the big failures just around that risk side of things.
Brian, one of the things I've been thinking about, I'll make it quick, Jack, because I know we got to land this plane. And are we a jet or a prop plane? Like how fast do we got to bring it in?
We've only got one more workshop results, and then we're at the tail end here. So.
Okay. So some of the things I've been thinking about is, human in the loop. I call it AI plus HI, artificial intelligence plus human intelligence equals activated intelligence. And Chad, you were talking yesterday in the prep for this about how somebody came to you and had this amazing analysis and output. And then you asked them what their point of view on it was. They'd failed. So they did AI thinking activated intelligence. They forgot to put their point of view. So if we could leave with one thing in mind, if you ever use output, you've got to put your own critical thinking and point of view on it. Activate your own intelligence. That's the power.
Yeah, 100%. And that scenario, somebody built a custom gem GPT, like whatever their tool of choice was, and developed some very, very high quality output. It was very good. And I said, hey, it's 5 pages. Do me a favor, summarize it. What's your point of view on this? And they just couldn't do it. They started scrolling and reading off the screen. I was like, you can't shortcut the internalization and the developing your own point of view. We can shortcut the research. We can shortcut some of the note taking. So we're only taking notes on the things that I really need to action on, not trying to recall everything that happened. But there is an internalization that's important for us to be effective communicating with somebody else.
Well, and that is the job of the sales engineers to come with that point of view.
Exactly.
And to Brian, to both of your points, the very last part of this summary, use it, sorry, if you go back one, use it to accelerate, not replace the human judgment.
Bingo.
That's going to be the key thing for pre-sales to be successful with AI.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right, so our last one, and we kind of, as we were wrapping up the big workshop at DemoFest, the key question was, are we just all over focusing, over rotating on AI? And the consensus themes were, the audience themes were, the hype is real, but also temporary, right? We're in this kind of bubble phase right now. Brian, you talked about some of the Gartner hype cycle and kind of where things are at. This curiosity, this interest will eventually normalize into competence. We will all get
Love
comfortable
that.
with where this fits in. The theme was around balance risk. If you over focus on AI, then you are sacrificing the core pre-sale skills, discovery, storytelling, value mapping, all the stuff we said are
Mhm.
fundamental no matter what. And you got to be careful of that. And then just that recognition of the varying maturity, that the adoption levels are going to differ by industry, by readiness, by whether there's those top level mandates, by a variety of different things. So the focus is going to be different just naturally there as well. So very exciting. We're not yet over focusing, but there's that risk.
Totally. All right, so if we kind of summarize this, really talking about using AI, inspire action, go experiment, find good use cases, and do it in community. Let's let's do this. Let's kind of end this with kind of our final thoughts. As we're thinking about what we've covered, what is the one takeaway that is most meaningful to each of us? Why don't we start there? Brian O, do you want to go first, and then Brian Lewis, and I'll wrap us up.
Yeah, I posted earlier that AI fluency is pre-sales currency. We got to lean in. Like we own this. We own our own destiny. And I loved on that last layer, it says curiosity leads to competence. Like we're authentically curious. Just do that. That's our strength. Now bring that into competence.
Brian L, OG.
Yeah. I mean, I'm back to the fundamentals of world-class pre-sales are not
Yeah.
changing just because AI is there. The efficiency gains will be there, the insights we can extract out, but that discovery into value, into demoing and showing, into proving, that doesn't change. That's going to be the same no matter what.
Yeah. And I think mine would be let's take it from efficiency to effectiveness. How can we use the efficiency gains? How can we work better as a team in the way that we share information? How can we offload some admin work so that we can think more critically about how we can help customers and drive meaningful outcomes? I think that's for me the next wave.
Yeah.
We started this conversation just comparing the difference in Fifth Avenue in New York and the speed of change in New York that happened over 13 years that really didn't impact people's effectiveness in getting from one place to another. It wasn't necessarily better. It was just different. Without question, the promise is here. The speed of innovation in AI and how people are thinking about it is here. How can we get after this and look at not only getting call summaries and writing emails that maybe are not as terse or summarizing a long chain because I don't want to read it all. Like, can we move past that to say, hey, as a human, I am better at what I do because of the way the team and I are using this. I think that's a real strong promise. Brian Oling, Brian Lewis, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your expertise. Team, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate your insights and engaging in the chat. Let's keep the conversation going. Find us on LinkedIn. Let's engage on this. And if Home Run, 2Win, Progressive Selling IQ could help you in any way, be sure to reach out to us. Love to continue the conversation. Thanks so much for joining. Have a wonderful day.
Cheers.